things have changed. When I was growing up, if there was any talk of UFOs or aliens or asteroids or spaceships, there was something wrong with you. You were a little off, or you lived in Alabama, and you were abducted by somebody. And then we've seen it over the years change. But I thought there would be a bigger reaction from civilization. That, perfect example. One of my favorite TV shows is Skinwalker Ranch. And they do a lot of work trying to study the orbs and the frequencies. And that maybe it's a wormhole of some sort of these little orb things and shift change and all this stuff. And they're doing it into terms from a scientific perspective. They never come out and say, well, we know it's an alien or we know it's this. They say it's a phenomenon. And as they try to get more data and more stuff, is it because there's no quick... Like until we have a FaceTime from an alien talking to us, will people actually be more fascinated about it or take? Because I think it's fascinating because when you talk about, I just feel like it's an ignorant thing to think that there's not other life out there, other forms of intelligence. And I always say that, I shouldn't be able to say this better, but umama. Oumuamua. Okay, now I can only say it aggressively. Oumuamua. And you talk about interstellar visitors, and you have an open dialogue about the possibility because as a scientist, you're supposed to ask those questions, correct?
Yeah, but one thing to keep in mind is, astronomy is focused on very distant sources of light usually, or sources of signals. And the question is whether there is anything close to Earth. And, for me, the turning point was 3 reports that were delivered by the Director of National Intelligence. The US government has to monitor the sky for national security purposes. It's a serious matter. You don't want drones. You don't want espionage. So they monitor the sky. Now, when they admit in 3 reports to the US Congress that they're not doing their job, you should take it seriously, because how often is a government official telling you that, they get $1 trillion in the 2026 defense budget, and yet they can't figure out what is in the sky above the US? That's a serious matter. So I take it seriously, and that's exactly the reason that I established and became head of the Galileo project, where we are building observatories, 3 of them so far, one in Massachusetts, another one in Pennsylvania, and a third one in Nevada, where we monitor the sky 24/7. In the coming year, we should have a few million objects that we monitor, and we're trying to figure out if there are any outliers that are not human-made, any unusual objects. And of course, the government may have data. Now, my hope is, even if we end up realizing that everything we see is human-made, suppose we end up with that conclusion, it would still be useful. I would give the knowledge, the know-how, how to make those detectors and how to analyze data with machine learning, artificial intelligence, to the Pentagon. They can use it for national security purposes, for defense, and it wouldn't be a lost effort. But if we do find anything unusual, obviously it would be the biggest discovery of science ever. And so I decided to look into it. And to me, it sounds very reasonable, that either you help national security or you do state-of-the-art science. But it's not this opinion is not being shared with most people in academia, even those that are targeting technological signatures of extraterrestrial civilization. In fact, that community that is called SETI is the most hostile to the kind of research I'm doing. They don't want to look at objects near Earth. They don't allow any discussion on those objects in their conferences. They made a decision not to discuss it. And moreover, they're hostile to considering the technological origin of interstellar objects. Just to give you an example, this week they came out with a press release where they said we looked for 5 hours for any radio transmission from 3I Atlas, the latest interstellar object that was found. We didn't see any radio transmission in the frequency band between 1 and 12 gigahertz that cell phones operate in. Therefore, it's not a technological object. Now, just think about this statement. You looked at for 5 hours.
5 hours,
a 16,000-year journey of this object within the solar system, all the way out to the Oort cloud. So you expect the transmission to happen for 16,000 years all the time, so that when you look at a window of 5 hours, you will definitely detect it. You expect it to be in the direction of Earth. You expect the object to communicate with the sender when it takes 30,000 years for the signal to move at the speed of light across the Milky Way galaxy one way. Why would this object communicate with the sender? It can never get any real-time guidance or anything. So it's all used in order to argue this is not technological. They looked at a short window of time just to be able to say this is not, and their mindset is all about saying things are not detected, because for 65 years they were waiting for radio signals, didn't find it. But I say that's an approach that, is just like waiting for a phone call at home.
Yeah.
Nobody may call you when you're waiting.
Well, not to mention, you might not have the number. Their technology, yes. Radio might be something their babies play with.
Exactly.
You have no idea. Or here's a plan. Here's a funny thing. They don't want to talk to you.
Yeah, but I'm just illustrating
I'm just saying, I'm not a scientist. I don't claim to be one, but as a human being, this makes sense to me.
This is the community responsible for collecting technological signals.
That's a little scary.
The SETI community. They did not allocate several months of their time to explore this possibility. That would mean that it's a priority for them if they were to say we invested a lot of time, instead they looked for 5 hours and said nothing. Like it's as if they wanted to just dismiss that possibility.
Or maybe it's more important about getting funding than it is in finding solutions.
Yeah, it's like letting the cat take care of the milk. I mean, this community that is supposed to represent the search for technological signatures is just locked on the search for, radio signals, and that's it. My point is that finding a package in our mailbox or in our backyard is more likely, because you don't need the sender to be alive when you explore your back. There may be a tennis ball thrown by a neighbor in your backyard that took billions of years to arrive here. And by the way, most stars are billions of years older than the sun. We are late to the party. And if you imagine the Voyager spacecraft that we launched in the 70s, it will take it less than 1 billion years to cross the Milky Way galaxy. So there was plenty of time, even for the 1970s technologies, to make it across the Milky Way over the past 1 billion years, and they were ahead of us for billions of years. So, the point is, we should be open-minded. This is not a crazy idea. This is a very reasonable idea. My conclusion is, common sense is not common in academia.
No, that's apparently my trademark is common sense, and I don't really feel like it's a skill. It's not like I went to I went to the College of Common Sense. I graduated because I did the work.
I'm telling you I was more naive than you, and now when I see things around me, it's not the way I imagined it. Okay, so I'm talking from the inside, telling you that things need to be changed in the culture of academia, and I very much hope that the next generation will have a better experience, that in fact they will be open-minded. They will search for the question that the public cares most about. There is a huge interest, over the past few months. When I wrote about 3i Atlas on medium.com, I have the link is Avi-Loeb, avi-loeb.medium.com. I put an essay every day or two updating about the status, what we know about 3i Atlas. I wrote 2 papers just today, and we can talk about it, about 3i Atlas. And my point is, I have 5 million views every month for essays that take 6 minutes to read each. And it's not a tweet. And getting millions of people interested in science is not a trivial matter. If you were to discover a particle, I don't think that you will have 5 million readers every month,
No, because it's, the biggest thing is that I think a lot of it has to do, and by design, is that it's so hard to figure out what is true or what is fact and what is feelings. We used to have it in this, and I think we need to go back to it. Even when a guy comes on TV to talk to you, it needs to be at the bottom, editorial. Like there's a difference between a newsman talking and a scientist talking than a talking head or TV personality.
Exactly.
And they've blurred those lines. So then you could have someone like me. Let's just say I've decided I'm just trying to make a quick buck. I get a science white lab coat, and I start telling everyone that I know for a fact that there are no aliens and that we're the aliens. and I just spit that. And anytime a scientist, a man like yourself with incredible accolades challenges me, I'll be like, well, you're racist. And then you're like, wait, I came to talk about the possibilities, because here's the thing. You want to ask questions. That is the whole point of science, is to question things.
Exactly.
And to find bits and pieces. And then you have a hypothesis. And then something will happen that we all knew that all mammals give live birth. That was true. Then lo and behold, somebody in Australia found a damn duck-billed platypus, and now everything has changed. And
exactly.
Oh, that's just that's a freak.
But there is a lot of resistance to innovation of this type.
A ton of it.
And we can stay ignorant. That's no problem. The Vatican argue that the sun moves around the earth, for a long time. And by the way, the earth was moving around the sun 4.6 billion times before the Vatican even existed. So what people say to each other is completely irrelevant. The question is, do we have a neighbor? And that's a serious matter. You can sit at the dinner table and tell your family that we don't have any neighbors. You have all these houses that are similar to our house, but they don't have any residents. They may have microbes. And by the way, this is the mainstream view within astronomy. Microbes are everywhere. Intelligence is unlikely. We might be the only ones. And if you tell your family members there are no residents in those houses, they will accept it, but they will stay ignorant. On the other hand, if you tell your family members, look, check out the backyard. Do we have any tennis ball thrown by a neighbor? Do we see any construction project in a neighbor's yard that may indicate that there is a resident? Did anyone knock on the door recently? If you ask those questions, you might find that you have a neighbor. And that's a much better way to recognize the reality that you live in. You can stay ignorant forever. That's not a problem. Nobody cares in the universe at large if we are ignorant. But if you want to adapt to the reality that you live in, it's important to know whether you have a neighbor, because the neighbor may show up at your front door. And it's, from the national perspective, it's a question of security or safety of the people. We protect the people against the adversarial nations, but we protect against, let's say, an impact by an asteroid, because we know that dinosaurs were killed 66 million years ago by a huge rock the size of Manhattan Island. So we want to figure out if there is any rock approaching. But for some reason, the notion that there might be alien technology, a technological gadget that is visiting the inner solar system that could be a potential threat, was not discussed. So in July, I proposed a scale that is now called the Loeb scale, where 0 is a natural interstellar object, an object that came into the solar system and is of natural origin, like an iceberg.
A comet, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And a 10 is some technological object that could be a potential threat to humanity. And I suggested that we we give a rank to every new interstellar object, because it could be a black swan event that we give a low probability to being a threat, but yet it has a huge impact on humanity. And, the intelligence agencies after September 11th decided to update their practices. They consider low probability events just because of the big impact. And these black swan events, are remembered from the Trojan horse story. The residents of Troy dismissed the possibility that the Trojan horse would be a risk to them. So we need to consider that, and scientists are not used to it. Scientists say, at the 95% confidence, I think it's an iceberg, so they are done. That's it. We don't need to
and then the
discuss
Titanic happens. Hey, thanks for watching. If you like what you just saw, don't stop there. You can catch the full conversations right here, only on Planet Tyrus. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what's next, and you don't want to miss what's next. I'm telling you, bad things will happen. Oh, I'm just playing. Nothing bad's going to happen, but I won't be your friend.